Hello, AP Proctors. I just want to say thank you on behalf of CAK for helping to proctor AP exams. My name is Pamela Kilburn. I'm the AP coordinator, and I'm going to spend some time just walking you through the AP exam proctoring process. And if you have any questions or thoughts or concerns after the session is done, you're welcome to email me with any additional questions you may have. Attached to this email, you'll also find some additional documents that can be helpful in understanding the AP process. Today, we will review the policies and procedures for proctoring this year's AP exams. This session will last approximately 40 minutes. We want to make sure that all of your questions are answered before we finish. The success of the administration depends upon your understanding not only of AP policy, but also of our procedures for administering the exams. The documents mentioned in this webinar have been attached to this email for your reference. Please read through them before your first AP exam administration, but you are not responsible for printing them or bringing them with you on your exam day, since printed copies will be provided for you with your exam materials. The AP exam administration is the culmination of all of the hard work our students have done this year in their AP courses. Students will expect the AP exams to be administered in a professional manner. Proctors should project confidence when providing the instructions and should be able to answer general questions with authority. To do this, you should review all of the documents that are distributed today before exam day, and please contact me with any questions. As a proctor, you must be attentive to the group of exam takers and make your presence known throughout the administration. You must carry out your responsibilities in an organized, friendly, and non-discriminatory manner. During the exam, you must not read, eat, drink, engage in conversation, correct papers, or perform any activity not related to the test administration. You may never discuss any multiple choice or unreleased free response content with anyone. You may only discuss free response content if that specific content was released on the College Board website 2 days after the regularly scheduled exam administration. Depending on the exam, you may be in the room for over 4 hours. Please dress in comfortable clothing and wear soft-soled shoes. It creates a disturbance if students can hear you walking up and down the rows. I also recommend bringing layers with you to the exam. A cardigan, sweater, or jacket are helpful because sometimes the temperature in the room can fluctuate between warm and very cold. So it's always good to have that handy. Also, students have been instructed about dress code in the AP pre-administration session that they were given, and they will not be in uniform that day. They're welcome to wear relaxed casual clothing, which could include jeans or sweatpants or any sort of athletic wear that they'll be comfortable in. They should not be in pajamas or overly revealing clothing, but as the AP coordinator, I'll handle addressing that with students that morning, so you don't need to worry about monitoring that. If you do notice something that you're concerned about, you're welcome to notify me and I can check that out for you. The materials on this particular slide will be provided for you on exam day, but also if you would bring a watch or cell phone to monitor the time with, just make sure that your cell phone ringer and watch alarm are both off. A regular wall clock will also be provided for you. We use a digital version because students are a little more comfortable with that. The clocks in the classroom are not digital, and sometimes that stresses students out. So we've purchased digital clocks that have big digital numbers on there so that students can clearly keep track of the time that way. Just make sure on the exam morning that the clock is correct and that it matches the time on your phone, so that as you're monitoring the exam time and writing times down on the board and on the test packet, your times match on your phone and on the clock. Every student taking an AP exam receives a student pack. The student pack includes information on AP policy, contact information for the AP program, college codes, and survey questions. Each student pack has a set of bar-coded AP number labels that is unique for each student. A label is placed on every answer sheet, free response booklet, and student's response CD or tape that a student uses during this administration. AP number labels are also placed on certain AP Studio Art portfolio materials. Students must not share their AP numbers. Students may print their AP numbers in appropriate areas if they run out of labels. Students must use the same AP number for all exams taken this year. The AP number identifies the student electronically and helps ensure the rapid and accurate processing of materials. Missing AP numbers may result in the loss of student materials because the AP number is the only way to link students to their exam materials. The student pack includes a removable card that students can use to retain their 2018 AP number. Students will be directed to place an AP number label on the card, remove it from the student pack, and keep it for future reference when viewing scores in July or ordering score reports or other services. In the event that a student pack is misplaced, please contact me for the student's AP number. Let's review the exam schedule and proctor assignments. Please check your exam assignments and make sure that you are still able to proctor on your assigned date and time. Let me know if you see a conflict. Remember, you cannot proctor an exam if you teach or have taught any AP or non-AP course in that subject, are involved with AP test prep, or have an immediate family member taking that particular exam, even at another school. Immediate family members include parents, grandparents, siblings, children, and your spouse. On the schedule, I've noted the reporting times for proctors. If you are proctoring a morning exam, you need to report to LMU at 7:30 a.m. If you're proctoring an afternoon exam, you need to report at 11:30 a.m. I will meet you there at that time with your test materials unless you're told otherwise. Please be prompt. It is essential that we adhere to a strict time frame in order to meet the start times required by the AP program. Official start times ensure that all exam takers are essentially sequestered simultaneously, thus reducing the risk of disclosing exam items to the students who have not entered the exam room. Please give yourself enough time to count the exam materials and prepare your room before the students arrive. When you count the exam materials, check that the title on all exam covers is correct. For the 2018 administration, the title on the Section 1 cover of the following exams are printed in blue: U.S. Government and Politics, and English Literature and Composition. Tables and chairs may need to be rearranged in order to make straight rows. Sometimes LMU has tables that are facing sideways on either side of the classroom. Those tables should just be straightened out so that they align with the tables that are facing forward to make long rows. It's important that students are always facing in the same direction. Once you arrive in your exam room, please confirm that you have the correct number of exam booklets for your subject and all necessary exam materials such as CDs and/or tapes. Confirm that you have the correct number of AP student packs and enough answer sheets as well. Note that the same version of the answer sheet, purple and blue, is used for both regularly scheduled and late testing exams. Contact me immediately if you note any discrepancies. Be sure that the room contains the proper number of desks or tables and chairs, and that the students will be comfortably seated. Check to make sure that students are properly spaced and all facing in the same direction. The distance between students should be measured from the center of one student to the center of the next student. Failure to follow seating requirements could result in cancellation of exam scores. Check that the clock is in working order and that there are no subject-related materials on the walls. Let me know if the room temperature is unreasonable. There should be pencil sharpeners and waste baskets in the room. Post exam in progress and cell phones are prohibited in the testing room signs on the doors, and prepare for the student's arrival. AP policy states that no one should be in the exam room except for the students, proctors, and the AP coordinator. The exam room must never be left unattended. Once you get your exam material bucket, just make sure that those exam materials are never left unsupervised. Even if the door is closed and the students do not have access to the area, exam materials must always be under the supervision of a test administrator or a proctor. As students arrive, mark the roster accordingly. Students should not choose their own seats. Assign seats to all students or follow a pre-assigned seating chart if one is provided for you. Students should not be seated alphabetically or following any other expected pattern. Everyone must face the same direction. The procedure that we use for this is to have students, when they enter the exam room, they have to wait to enter the exam room until you have it set up. So they'll be in the lobby. Once you're ready for them to come to the exam room, you'll carry the test materials with you in the bucket that you were given so that they're not left unsupervised. You'll let them know that you're ready and have them walk back to the classroom. When they come to the classroom, you'll instruct them to line up on the front wall of the classroom and to leave their personal belongings up there. Make sure that they know that they will not be able to access materials that are in purses or bags. So if they have anything that they might need or want to access during break, such as money or wallets or anything like that, they need to leave that on top of their bag. So that they're not going into their bags during break. Once they've done that, you'll also have them leave their cell phones at the front of the room if they have them with them. I've encouraged them to leave their cell phones in their vehicle if they've driven to the exam so that they don't even need to worry about this part. But if they do have a cell phone with them, you'll just watch as they power it off and have them leave it in a pile at the front of the exam room where they do not have access to it during the exam. Once you've done all of those things, you can go ahead and assign seats to them. The way that we do that is we take the student packs and they will be shuffled so that they're not in alphabetical order. And once you've done that, you can lay them out on the seats that you want students to sit in. They should be sitting in every other chair so that there's one student per table, which works perfectly for the requirements for the distance that they need to be seated apart. Another important AP policy is that food and drink is not allowed in the exam room. So how we handle this is we have a bucket with food and that they can put food and drink in with Sharpies to write their name on it. And this bucket is left in the hallway directly outside of the exam room, and they can access it during their break. All right, this slide lists what students can and cannot bring with them on test day. Although students should already be aware that cell phones and other electronic devices are prohibited in the testing room, the general exam instruction scripts still includes text for you to ask students if they have these devices. If any student has one, ask that it be turned off and collect it. Make arrangements so that the device can be properly identified for a prompt return after the exam. AP policy states that no one should be in the exam room except for students, proctors, and the AP coordinator. The exam room must never be left unattended. Make sure also another sort of new thing that we need to keep an eye out for during AP exams is the Apple Watches. So it would look very similar to a regular watch, but it's square and digital. So any sort of smartwatch, students have the ability to access the internet with these devices, so it's really important that they do not wear it for exams. I've seen students wearing these to exams in the past, and so it's really important just to keep an eye out for those. If you have any questions about what they look like, you can just Google the image of what a smartwatch would look like. but they cannot have any access to the internet or other digital devices like that during the exam. Proctors may seat students and begin general exam instructions too prior to these official start times, but under no circumstances may the shrink wrap of the actual AP exam or CDs be opened prior to the start of these 1-hour windows. Students who begin taking the actual exam at any point earlier than the official start time will have their scores canceled, and the schools administering these exams may not be allowed to offer AP exams in the future. All exam booklets are to be distributed individually. You are to hand one shrink-wrapped exam packet directly to each student in the order that they appear in bundles or as individual exams. Do not ask students to pass exam packets to others. Note that an 11-digit alphanumeric textbook number is printed in the upper right-hand corner of both the multiple choice and free response booklets. Certain exams feature an additional Section 1 and/or Section 2 booklet. These booklets also have serial numbers and must be returned to the AP program. Check that students are completing the answer sheet in pencil only. Students should take great care in completing their identification information on the answer sheet and in using their unique AP number. Once general exam instructions 2 have been completed, you are to move on to the actual exam instructions. Number labels to label the answer sheets and free response booklets. So then the labels for the free response booklets, it will give you instructions for this during the exam, but it's really important on the essay portion that they wait until after they've already written their essay to put the exam label on. The reason for this is that they may change their mind about which prompt they want to use. So there's going to be labels that indicate which option that they've chosen, and that's the label that they're going to want to wait to put on. So it'll tell you this in the exam instructions, but students sometimes sort of tune out the exam instructions because they're so stressed about the test and so focused on the details of preparing that they tend to tune us out a little bit. So just keep an eye out for that and make sure that students are not putting those stickers on before they start writing in those sections. Okay, this is a list of things that you should be doing during the exam. So you'll be assisting students with filling out identification information on answer sheets, supplying materials such as pens, pencils, and calculators, any extra paper. Those materials are going to be in your exam bucket that you receive on exam morning, so they will be provided for you. You're going to note the start and stop times of the exam when beginning the exam, not before. So you're going to write these on the board with a dry erase marker. The dry erase marker will also be provided for you. And what it's saying there is just don't, in advance, anticipate the start and stop times. Wait to write those down until you actually begin the exam because it needs to be to the minute. These tests need to be timed exactly in order to be accurate and fair for students. You're also going to supervise the testing room, making sure that students are working on the correct section and guarding against cheating. Just make sure that they're not talking during the exam or looking at each other's work. Also, you'll make a seating chart. So during the exam, once students have sat down, you can do this chart or you can wait until during break. I find it easiest to do this during break because if you need to look over a student's shoulder and see their name on the exam sheet, it's not as disruptive to students. So I would recommend doing it that way. You are going to just make a map of how the students are seated in the exam room. But you're also going to note the distribution pattern. So you're going to draw a line that indicates how you passed out and collected the AP exams. It's important that you follow that pattern the same way both times, and that just helps them, if there is an issue that is reported, to figure out what happened. Do not read, eat, drink, or engage in conversation, correct papers, or perform any activity not related to the administration during the exam. It seems like a very long exam, but there are so many things that you're doing during the exam and preparing for and watching out for that it's really, the time goes by faster than you think it might. Also, it's really important that during the exam you're walking around a lot, because at LMU the lights are in some of the classrooms on timers. So if there's no activity in the room, the lights can go out, and that would be an exam incident if that happens. So we try to prevent that by just walking around a lot and making sure those lights do not go out. I will ask if there's any way to turn that feature off in the exam rooms before the exam, but I can't promise that that will be the case. So just be mindful that you need to be moving around in the room, since students will not be moving. Proctors may not, under any circumstances, see the exam booklets. If students ask you a question regarding one of the questions on the exam, please tell the students that you're not allowed to see exam questions. Students may go alone to the restroom at any time. 2 or more students may go if a proctor accompanies them. So just as you dismiss students, even if they're different genders, it's important that there's not more than one student out of the classroom at a time, unless there's an additional proctor or unless I'm there as the AP administrator to supervise them when they're out of the classroom. Also, as mentioned earlier, do not leave the room unattended. A proctor must be in the room at all times. Be sure that students do not take test materials with them from the room, and that they leave their exam booklets closed on their desk with their answer sheets inside. So if they do use the restroom, they need to close up their answer booklet, not leave it open on their desk. Also, it talks about making sure materials do not leave the exam room. This includes any scrap sheets of paper or anything that they may have with them at their desk. Do not give extra time to students who use the restroom. They just forego that time if they're out of the room. Before the exam begins, please note the time. Be sure it is between 8 and 9 a.m. local time, or between noon and 1 p.m. local time. If it is before the start of the hour, please wait until the appropriate time to begin. Note and post the start and stop times for each section after reading the relevant instructions. Do not write the start and stop times in advance of the test administration, or you may affect the testing time. In general, students should not be admitted after the start of the exam. They have been notified of this. However, if a student arrives to the exam room late, but before the other exam takers have finished filling out their identification information on their answer sheets, and the school considers the cause of the student's late arrival to be beyond the student's control, then the school may admit and test the student. Just check with me if this is the case. If a student were to arrive late, I should still be there at that point to see them and talk to them before they enter the exam room. But if not, just if you'll notify me via text message, and I can help you make a decision about whether or not to allow them to test that morning. A proctor should sit with the student after the exam to supervise the completion of any outstanding identification fields on the answer sheet. This is just for students who would be arriving late. Note, schools are not required to admit or test latecomers. Students who arrive late must follow the directions of the testing site personnel. Once the exam begins, walk up and down the rows and around the room. Check that students are working on the appropriate section and that they are using a pencil for the multiple choice section. Be sure that students are using a calculator on approved sections parts only. Within the first half an hour of the exam, make sure that the number of students taking the exam plus the number of undistributed exam packets equals the number of exam packets you received. If the numbers do not match, Let the students finish the section they're working on. At the end of the section, stop the exam and locate the materials. If the materials cannot be located, contact me for further instructions before resuming. While students are testing, complete a seating chart. A sample seating chart can be found on pages 122 to 123, and this information will be in your binder for you on test day. At the end of the multiple choice section, students are asked to seal the open sides of their exam booklet with white seals, which are provided with the exam booklet. There are 3 seals provided. Make sure that students use all 3. So there's one for the top, one for the bottom, and one for the side. Sometimes students will only use a couple of them, but they really need to use all 3. And they should be lining them up with the markings on the booklet so it actually shows them how they want the seals placed. So it needs to be sort of sideways rather than, it needs to be vertical rather than horizontal when they place those stickers on the booklet. AP policy states that no one except the student may have access to the multiple choice questions. Proctors may not open exam booklets. Collect exams and answer sheets in the same order in which they were distributed. Check that each answer sheet has an AP number label and AP exam label applied. Note that the AP European History and U.S. History exams include additional Section 1 booklets. These exam materials should be collected in the order stated in the exam instructions. After the multiple choice booklets and answer sheets have been collected, recount everything before dismissing students for the break. Be sure that your used booklet and answer booklet counts are correct. There is a 10-minute break between the multiple choice and free response sections. Students cannot make any phone calls, reference textbooks or notes, or consult with teachers or students about the exam during the break. They cannot send text messages, check email, use social networking sites, or access electronic equipment such as cell phones, smartphones, smartwatches, laptops, tablet computers, etc. Cameras or other photographic equipment, devices that can access the internet, or any other electronic or communication devices. Students may have a drink or snack at this time. Students may not leave the designated area without permission. If you have an additional proctor, the bathroom should be checked during and after the break. We do allow students to go to the lobby during the break. The reason for this is that they should not be eating in the classroom. So they're going to get their snacks and their drinks and go to the lobby. They can also use the restroom together at this time. Since there will be 2 of us on site during the break, it's okay for them to be out of the room more than 1 at a time. A relief proctor will be assigned to come into the room during the break period. If you need any additional breaks during the exam session, please text my cell phone number, which is listed on the exam schedule, and I will come to provide breaks as needed. Remember that the exam room cannot be left unsupervised at any time, so please wait for your relief proctor to enter the exam room before leaving. The second half of the exam consists of free response essays, problems, and/or spoken responses. The free response section may have an orange booklet that contains the exam questions. The written responses must be written in the free response booklet, not in the orange booklet. There are 2 exams, European History and U.S. History, that give students a choice of several essay topics. The exams feature a sheet of labels with question choices shrink-wrapped with free response booklets. When students remove the shrink wrap from all Section 2 packets, these labels should be put aside on the students' desks until the completion of Section 2. At the conclusion of the free response section, students will be instructed to apply the appropriate label to the front cover of their Section 2 booklet, indicating their essay choices. This is the part that we talked about earlier. Just make sure that they do not apply those essay choice stickers prior to the beginning or prior to the start of their exam, but they should wait until after they've already completed the essay to apply those stickers. The free response exam booklets contain inserts which have the questions written on them. Make sure to tell students not to write their answers in the on the insert, but to write them in the free response booklet. There will be lines in the booklet for them to use to write the answers to the questions on, so just make sure that they're not writing their answers directly next to the questions in the insert booklets. Extra line paper is available for students who need extra paper. Students should write their AP number, the title of the exam, and the question that they are working on on the top of each sheet. They should not write their name or their teacher's name. You're going to staple any extra paper that students use to the page corresponding to their question for them. A stapler will also be provided for you. But if a student were to choose to use extra paper, this is going to require the completion of an incident report form. So that form will also be in your binder for you to complete if this were to happen during your test administration. After the exam, you'll collect all exam materials. As you collect the materials, check the front cover of each Section 2 booklet to be sure that the student has placed an AP number label in the box and noted his or her essay choices if applicable. Also, check that the student has completed the important identification information area on the back cover and that answers have been written in the free response booklet, not in the orange booklets. Before dismissing students, count the used free response booklets and orange booklets. Count all of the master CDs, which really doesn't apply to any of the exams we give. We do not use CDs as well. Again, be sure that your numbers match. Check that you are not missing anything before dismissing students. Except for emergencies, students may not leave the exam room early. You will be reminding students that they may only discuss the free response questions if the specific questions on the exam they took are released on the College Board website 2 days after the exam. If the questions are not released, they may not be discussed with anyone. Make a final check of the testing room to be sure nothing has been left behind. All of the exam materials and supplies are to be collected and returned to me at CIK immediately after the exam. Account for all exam booklets, answer sheets, student packs, master CDs, and student response recordings. Return a complete roster as well as the seating chart and, if warranted, an incident report. So after the exam, I can either come pick the exam materials up for you or you can bring them to CAK. We'll just make arrangements that day to determine which will work best. Also, just make sure that you have everything in the bucket to return to the school, including the clock. Sometimes the clock gets left behind at the facility. Just make sure that gets taken down and put back in the bucket. There will be shrink wrap on that students need to dispose of before leaving the room. Just make sure that that is tossed in the trash. We do not need to keep the shrink wrap for any reason. And again, make sure that exam materials don't leave the room. Sometimes students will try to ask you if they finish early if they can go ahead and leave if they say that they're done. They may not do that. This is a timed test and they get released once you dismiss them at the very end of the exam. For every AP exam administration, a sample seating chart must be completed. The instructions can be found on page 122 to 123. The seating chart notes what seats were occupied and the distribution pattern of the exam materials along with the test booklet serial numbers or students' full names. We have an option of whether to use serial number or full name. I find it easier just to write the student's full name for this. Please be sure to write clearly as the chart may be referenced during an incident or security violation. Please sign and date the chart. After the exam, be sure to return the seating chart to me along with the other exam materials. An incident is any disturbance or situation that occurs during the exam that could have an impact on a student's score. The table in the coordinator's manual and in the exam instruction booklet lists incidents and how they should be resolved. The table also indicates when an incident should be documented. In the case of a testing incident, refer to the table and complete the incident report form if it is warranted. The form is on pages 126 to 127. Review the form and follow the directions carefully. Be sure that the details of the incident are reported to me. I would request that you report an incident immediately if possible, if you'll just text me and let me know if something were to happen so that I can help you handle that. The directions and the chart referenced and the sheets for the incident reporting form will also be in your binder under the form section. As mentioned earlier, an incident report form is now required if a student uses extra paper. The short answer and free response booklets are designed to include sufficient space for student responses. However, if students require additional space to complete their responses, provide lined paper. They must only write their AP number, the title of the exam, and the question number at the top of each sheet of extra paper. After the exam, have students staple their extra paper to the page corresponding to that question. Students are not permitted to keep any extra paper that is provided during the exam. Consult the administration incidents table to complete an incident report for students who used extra paper. Note: do not provide extra paper for students to write drafts of their responses or notes. During the exam, they are not encouraged to write drafts. Sometimes students will want to sort of outline what they plan to write. If so, they can use the margins of the page to write this sort of information in and sort of structure their essay if they want to do that beforehand. But it's really not encouraged, and it's not suggested as a good use of their time to do too much of that. So they are not provided with paper for that purpose. Also, there's a concern that if they were to do that, they could take the paper with them and share that information with others. So lined paper is just for if they're writing their essay and they run out of space for the actual essay itself. There's no drafting allowed of the essay. Occasionally, a student will decide to cancel the exam score before being dismissed from the exam room. In that case, the student must complete the AP score cancellation form and either return it to me for inclusion in the return materials or fax it to AP Services by June 15th. A signature from the student and the student's parent or guardian is required on the form. The form is available at apstudent.collegeborg.org/services. There also will be copies of this form in your binder for you. If a student feels that a question has an error or is unclear, advise the student to fill out the AP exam question ambiguity and error form on the AP Student's website. This will also be in your binder, and they can follow the directions there for sending it to the AP Assessment Development. The AP Biology, Calculus, Chemistry, Physics, and Statistics exams require or permit students to use a calculator during all or part of the exam. If a student chooses to take the exam without a calculator, the student must hand copy and sign the calculator release statement. The signed statement indicates the student won't be able to challenge the AP score because the student did not use a calculator on the exam. The signed statement is to be returned to me after the exam. For your information, I have provided you a list of AP-approved graphing calculators in your binder. Also, additional calculators will be provided for you on test day according to which calculator is allowed for the specific exam that you'll be administering. So you will receive some extras that students can use. We've never run into a situation in the past where a student who did not bring a calculator or whose calculator was not working wasn't able to get a replacement. If that were to happen, I would just ask that you would notify me about that so that I can help resolve it for you. Our program requires administering AP exams off school grounds. Please note that the locations are off-site. The information is included in your proctor schedule. Each subject exam must be administered in its entirety at the same off-site location. You may not take exams home, store them in the trunks of your car, or store them in an off-site location. Do you have any questions on the policies and procedures that were reviewed today? If so, please contact me via email or cell phone before the exam. If there's a particular portion of the training that was unclear to you or you're in need of further explanation, please let me know that. And please also review the instructions and information provided to you in this email before the exam. If you have any questions, let me know as soon as possible, since I will be on site starting the testing on Monday. AP Chemistry is the first exam on Monday morning. And I just want to say thank you for assisting with this year's AP exam administration. Your time and effort are greatly appreciated, and it's an incredible help to me during a really busy end of the year school season. So I'm personally really thankful and appreciative of each of you for the work that you're doing. And as noted on this slide, there's a payment of $60 that has increased from the previous payment of $50 per exam. That will be sent to you shortly after the completion of your exam. If you have any trouble, or if you don't receive that payment within at least a couple of weeks after the exam, please let me know so that I can check on that for you. And again, feel free to reach out to me at any point if you have questions, need help, or need additional information. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye.